second CESTineers meeting. My name is Moritz Zeiss. I'm at the University Hospital in Erlangen. With me today are Simon, Magda, and Martin, who work in my team. And yeah, I'm happy to have a lot of people here in the audience interested in solutions for CEST on a Siemens platform. So yeah, that's what CESTineers is, to exchange a little bit as Siemens users for CEST. So CESTineers is also ISMM study group initiative, so it's open for everyone interested in advancing CEST MRI research, but especially here the focus is Siemens solutions. So we want to compile solutions, including to get an overview of available sequences, tested protocols, and guidance on post-processing to overcome typical challenges in CEST, like noise, motion, B0 and B1 artifacts, and also to have reasonable coverage and resolution in short as possible scan time. Our focus in the group is also on 7 Tesla, so some things will also be more specific to 7 Tesla, but all the sequences are also available for 3 Tesla. So what's necessary for high-quality CEST at a Siemens scanner? Well, first we need a sequence, and most important, the preparation. So we need any binaries that actually run on the scanner and can play a pre-saturated readout out. Then we have to actually define protocol parameters. So how exactly do we do the pre-saturation and how exactly do we do the readouts? And these are the protocol files or the profiles that we also want to share, and ini files and Pulseq files and CESTineers. And there's then, of course, a big step, which is the evaluation, where we go from raw data to final MTR symmetry or fitting or some neural network reconstruction. So for the sequences, we have different software versions and different solutions. I will also show a bit what's currently on the Siemens C2P exchange. Then we have many protocols. Well, there we also have some consensus, at least for APT-weighted imaging at 3T and brain tumors. But there's also more and more on the Pulseq-CEST library, where you can exchange in the open source standard Pulseq, multi-pool saturations, glutamate CEST, Wasabi, B0 and B1 mapping, and so on. And also for evaluation, there are different available tools. So also the new VIP sequence from Siemens has some online reconstruction. So you get images directly on the scanner, at least for symmetry. Then there's Olea Medical, which I also will talk a bit later what they're doing. And there's several available tools, including also on Pulseq-CEST and the Pulseq-CEST library. We also share some evaluation and post-processing tools now. So these are all necessary steps, right? This is all what we need to get the full pipeline. So let's first focus on the preparation, and I want to highlight some work we do, which I think is necessary in a research community context to have the exact CEST preparation definition. So currently in the new CEST VIP, that's an ini file, but it also supports Pulseq files now, which is something that we created as a hybrid sequence first. So the idea is we define the preparation in this open source standard Pulseq, and which can be shared in the Pulseq-CEST library. And then instead of a special card where you set up all the parameters, you pretty much choose your sec file, or in Siemens, a similar setup as here is the ini file. The big benefit of Pulseq, of course, is you can just exchange the sec files and analyze them. So in the Pulseq-CEST library, you find all kinds of different pre-saturation blocks, and you can load them in MATLAB or Python and plot them and see the exact micro Tesla pulse shapes here, or here a block pulse train, or here a more complicated off-resonant adiabatic spin lock. or a low power CEST. And more often than not, the B1 power is not clear from the paper. If people talk about peak power, average amplitude, B1 root mean squared, and whatnot. But if you have the exact definition of what people played out as a sec file, you can actually finally reproduce pre-saturation blocks and also share your cool new technique with your paper. Yeah, happy to get your pull request. Just log your sequence in, check it in the Pulseq-CEST library, and link to the public Git repository in your paper. Then you can make your research more reproducible. What we recently extended in the Pulseq-CEST library this is really a library of preparations, but we also have simulations there, some example data, and what's new now, some example evaluations. So the idea is that you pretty much have the sequence defined in Pulseq-CEST in the library, but you can now also pick an evaluation and so here I have real data evaluated with here some smoothing or B0 correction that will smooth the data and then doing the asymmetry. Now you see some funny peaks here that you wouldn't expect maybe in L-arginine. So now you can run the exact same sequence that you ran in the scanner on your Phantom. You can also run it on your simulation. And you see actually that the simulation shows you some sidebands. These sidebands are highly D1 dependent. That's why they also don't match perfectly. But you can analyze what happens with these sidebands if you do now your B0 correction and smoothing. So you see they turn into some little CEST peaks, but it's just some saturation sideband and can then be mistaken for a CEST effect. Yeah, and you can exchange easily the simulation parameters. You can exchange your evaluation or exchange different sec files to test, okay, what is the best combination of all of these for my Phantom or for my species that I want to analyze or for a certain organ. Yeah, and with this Pulseq-CEST, these preparations you can then carry to the scanner and have the same evaluation of the data. An extension of this is the hybrid approach. So first of all, with this, you can run a Pulseq sequence or just have a similar sequence that is inspired by the Pulseq. But one idea we had was to actually include the Pulseq preparation into the vendor sequence, which means you can use the closed source vendor sequence that now as a sequence building block can call the Pulseq preparation. So that's really nice because now you have one compiled sequence that can load any Pulseq preparation, also everything from the Pulseq-CEST library, and you right away will get reconstructed images that form a C spectra or whatever preparation you choose. Pure Pulseq would not have a reconstruction right away at the scanner. This is also partially working now, but not for all contrasts. So you have the big benefit of having a reconstruction, but you have another big benefit, and this is you can use the latest sequences for readout here, even using deep learning reconstruction as Martin Freudensprung just submitted to MIM this paper today. So there the idea is to combine also more advanced readouts. So that's not the end of it, because now what you have is pre-saturated data, but it would be nice to also have final maps at the scanner. And for this, we also, together with Siemens, introduced ONNX standard. So this means you have an open neural network standard that you can actually, in the ICE program, load any ONNX model that fits to your preparation. And this together then gives you really flexible tools. So you can download, for example, a Wasabi preparation, put it to your sequence, and then you choose the Wasabi neural network, and then you get DICOM B1 and B0 maps directly at the scanner. And the same pipeline you can just quickly change to deep CEST, low power, AMITE and RNOE CEST, for example. Or here also fingerprinting technique by or Perlman's group from Tel Aviv that you can just exchange. So This also has a PTX possibility. So in a own version of Pulseq 1.46, we actually can do PTX pulses or pulse-specific RF shimming. And then you can do also PTX at 7T systems. It's still on 1.4, so Pulseq 1.5 is not yet supported, but is under development. If you have now this PTX preparation, you can also do Wasabi for different modes. So for example, here's the circular polarized mode or an elliptical polarized mode, and you can measure the B1 and B0 maps of these. And these are the modes that we mix at 7 Tesla for this mimosa saturation, and then you get a quite homogeneous saturation also at 7 Tesla. Here again is the fingerprinting and approach, and also the low power multi-Pulseq-CEST. So here you see exactly how you get it from the scanner. So at the scanner, of course, there's a conversion factor. We have to push it to the DICOM integers between 0 and 4000 something. And then you get these maps out. And of course, offline, you get the exact correct ratios, but you can also convert them then to these images. So that's what you get in the scanner. A nice feature, what we also now developed with Tel Aviv is, right, so the first network looked a little bit funny that we applied at the scanner, but now they added some noise augmentation in their neural network training, and then they could actually get a much better fingerprinting here for the exchange rate of the MT. And this is nice because you can just exchange that now at the scanner, right? So you have a better neural network. So you just go there and exchange the ONNX file, and right away you will get the newest and better images. So here you see this comprehensive CEST map. So that's directly B0 and B1 corrected that you then get directly at the 7 Tesla scanner. So including also PTX pre-saturation. And so we do this for our hybrid sequence, but you can also use now the Siemens readout. Yeah, so also the Siemens WIP supports this Pulseq readout and also the ONNX files, which means you can directly go to the deep learning reconstruction of Siemens. So here we use it with KP6 and KP12. And you see that we get very high resolution scans here for amide CEST and also RNOE, and also this whole brain in all 6 minutes 30, because the number of case baselines pretty much stays the same. We invested it into resolution. Yeah, so here's another benefit of this hybrid approach. Yeah, or you see how far you can go. You can really use all this deep learning that we just learned in radiology now, how faster, well, in normal radiology is used to fasten all the scans. We use it here for resolution. So in pretty much the same time, same scan time, we can go from 2 times 2 times 4 millimeters to 1 times 1 times 2 millimeters. And here Martin also pushed it to the limit with KP16. So that's maybe just to show you what you should not do. At some point you will again have noise, but already 1 times 1 times 2 millimeter without any loss in scan time is pretty nice and gives us quite new opportunities now to use and to investigate. All right, so with this, we have a bit the sequence and preparation and also some of the sequences. However, I quickly wanted to have a look together at the C2P exchange. So what other sequences are there? Because some time ago, we were like the only sequence, but this changed. So there's multiple sequences available from other users that you also can try. So we haven't tested the others, but I can give you a quick opinion or a quick idea what these are. So this is a TSE and space CEST. So that's probably most similar to the Philips and also the Baltimore approach of doing fast spin echo sequences for CEST. So it has much higher SNR, but also a little bit lower resolution. Then the 2D spin echo API package from Emory. So that's from Han-Jung Kim and Philip Sund. So that's really the 2D multi-slice where he did all this unevenly segmented RF iteration, where he did the QAS technique and so on. So this you can do for doing quantitative AREX and QAS mapping. The CEST API from Catalina Raimond. So I just know Benjamin Ellingson published a lot with this pH-weighted molecular imaging CEST technique that you can also find there. And then there's one PTX-CEST. I was a bit surprised about the software version, but it seems to be PTX for VE11C. Yeah, so we're not the only ones with a PTX version. There's even other ones, and then there's also a 3D Flash from Tsinghua University. The interesting thing here, this is so-called water pre-saturated CEST. So you save a little bit of scan time by saturating all the water signal after each scan, and then you have a well-defined recovery and saturation phase and can speed up the saturation and the readout a bit. Our sequence are also they're available, so the snapshot CEST that we just showed, and also the hybrid we have a first version there, which is available upon request. To our sequence, so the snapshot flash approach is also very similar to what the Siemens VIP from BCD is very similar to the snapshot gradient echo CEST of our group. So we work here together with Patrick Liebig. And yeah, he just shared 2 slides that I can show. So yeah, but I also wanted to mention that there's a lot of B1 mapping techniques, which might also be interesting. So you can also find them. There's many of them. We tested and used Dream by the Bonn group, which gives you quite fast B1 maps at 7 Tesla, also for multi-channel, which is quite helpful for the Mimosa technique. All right, then we have the post-processing step, and I just want to mention quickly, if I have your attention, that it's important to do all of the steps. If you don't do this carefully, you can have unreliable or even false positive CEST effects. So motion correction is very important. The normalization by an unsaturated scan is important, and also that this unsaturated scan is well defined, like fully relaxed, or at least a well-defined scan that you can compare to the literature, right? If your normalization is twice higher, your CEST effect will be half as large. And if you compare to the literature, you might be surprised, but this can be explained by the normalization. B0 and B1 correction is, of course, super important. B0 always, B1 in the brain, in central slices, you might be fine. But if you go to whole brain already at 3 Tesla, you also need a B1 correction at 3 Tesla. Spectral and spatial smoothing and denoising is also indicated today. There's a lot of deep learning tools, but also conventional denoising. And I think it really is helpful to add some basic denoising because it just improves your image quality a lot. If you do it in the spectral domain, it's also less prone to hallucinate than on image-based data. And then finally, you have some contrast generation, like MTR symmetry or Lorentzian fitting, or some advanced neural networks, or do relaxation compensation, fluid suppression. So these are the steps, and it's important to do everything carefully. So of course, there's some online solutions that already have this incorporated, like also the Siemens VIP has some MTR symmetry calculation. However, if you do something new, you might want to do an offline solution that is more flexible, or use what I just showed with the hybrid to train a neural network that fits really your preparation. And then you can also use this online again. However, I wanted to mention that if you because also a lot of clinicians are interested in using CEST or having new ideas what potentially can be handled with CEST. So either stick to a simple online recon, right? Use this APT weighted scan with slight modifications, right? Either use this, Or if you realize you need something more complex, I really suggest that you need a technician, a PhD or a postdoc that is able to run this evaluation codes and validate if everything is correct. Yeah. So if you just want to run this on the side, some crazy CEST experiments, this is very prone to errors and probably will not lead to success or not fast. What evaluation tools are available offline? So there's a toolkit from MITK, open source toolkit. So all these links you find also on the CEST sources and CESTineers GitHub. There's one Laurentian fitting algorithm by the Düsseldorf group called CARV. We also have some basic CEST evaluation on CEST sources. We also share an advanced pipeline upon request that goes from DICOM and also raw Twix data to full CEST evaluation. From the Johns Hopkins group, there's a tool that you might know. So that's basically the APT-weighted CEST. And also, as I mentioned on the Pulseq-CEST library, there's now also some basic evaluation codes. So here we put everything in one script file pretty much to keep it simple. So this is meant for simple experiments or for start of your PhD. And then you can create your own toolbox out of this. And of course, there's a powerful post-processing toolbox that costs money by Olea Medical. However, they also do a great job promoting and helping less experienced or less technical people to get their data evaluated. I just gave a quick overview. So this we never tested. I think the MITK is quite mature, but I haven't tested it personally. Well, this is all MATLAB based, so it requires at least some MATLAB skills to know what you're doing. From Johns Hopkins, this is rather simple, so it's not too crazy, but it's also MATLAB. And we try to make it simple in one file, but also for both MATLAB and Python that you can run this. And if you write, so for clinicians, I suggest sometimes that if you don't have a PhD, it's probably a good solution to work with Olea Medical, where you can also contact Stefano Casagranda. However, I don't know if this is necessary because there's also a partnership between Olea and Siemens. So they want to make a clinical product for APT-CEST. And pretty much all these reconstructions and post-processing of Olea Medical will also flow somehow to the scanner. So that's at least what I hope. Yeah, they have a lot of B1 and B0 correction, denoising, and also motion correction, fluid suppression, and the final generation of the maps. And you can then have this with the advanced acquisition, what I just showed you also for Martin's work, which was also done with the Siemens with at least the high resolution things. Yeah, so that's a good development, I think, for us, and especially nice for clinicians who want to apply CEST. But with Olea, with the Olea tools, you probably can also do more recent techniques. Then they also announced the next clinical release. So they also want to include in the product the deep CEST, so this low power at 7 Tesla, what I just showed you, which is pretty much similar to what Martin showed you, which we developed together with Patrick Liebig from Siemens. This is how the Olea sphere tool looks like. So you pretty much see similar things as in MATLAB, right? To pick your offsets that you want to calculate the symmetry one, also range that you want to average on, and you get B0 and B1 corrected data. And here also fluid suppression. So this was, right, there was some developments in the last years that showed that a lot of the APT-weighted signal is actually overestimated in fluid areas, but you can correct for this, and then you see actually more the tumor core here and more interesting residual parts in the rim of the tumor. All right, so with that, I gave you an overview of what you need and what you can do and what you can also find on the CESTineers website, which we also want to update because there's not so much material for the VA sequences yet, but a lot of old protocols from VE where you can also see the PDFs and the profiles and get an idea how we do CEST. But we also want to put some of the INI files that work with the VIP there so we can share more. And with this, I hope we can make some beautiful CEST experiments. That's pretty much the overview. I have just one remark, which is also, I saw more and more groups working in other organs than the brain. So for example, in the breast or in the liver or in the body or in the muscle. And there was one issue that we realized. So a lot of people are using this wasabi technique. And in fatty tissue, it can be problematic because this wasabi technique is pretty much like this Rabi oscillations on the water. But of course, now if you have fat, you will also get the Rabi oscillations on the fat, right? So if you run this just around water, you will get a corrupted wasabi spectrum. And it also depends on the phase of your, on the echo time and the in phase or post phase setting of your readout. So in a post phase, your wasabi spectrum then looks like this, and this is pretty much unusable for conventional fit. So we wanted to stress that wasabi is not directly applicable in fatty tissues or in voxels that have both compartments, fat and water. Of course, if you can just segment your fat out, it doesn't matter. But if you have both compartments, it's complicated. Also, fat and water have very different T1 and T2 values, so also other B1 mapping techniques can suffer. So the question is a bit what B1 technique is best here. So we think the simple presat from Siemens, or also the sandwich method that I showed above, is probably most promising because it has the least assumptions and looks also okayish to us, but we're also not super satisfied. The dream that I mentioned has also some fat-water contrast still, so we can partially correct for it, but it's also a bit tricky. An actual flip angle mapping is quite lengthy, and we also have some fat-water contrast there. So if you do anything in fat or fat water compartments, you have to look carefully for the B1 mapping. There's not a perfect solution. If anybody has one, please let us know and share your information. It would be good to also have their proper B1 mapping. Yeah. And also, right, there's chemical shift artifacts. So you might be completely separated from fat in theory, but then again, you're not because of the chemical shift artifact. So if we have a proper B1 mapping and can disentangle this would be great. All right, with this, I'm already done. And thank to from the companies, Patrick Liebig, Robin Heidemann, and Stefano Casagranda, and of course, everyone from my team, especially Martin, Magda, and Simon, who helped me with some slides for today. All right, and I thank you for your attention, and we are happy to take some questions or suggestions for the CESTineers website or for topics for next meetings or whatever. I also want to highlight, so if you have any questions there, not today, but on another day, you can also go to the discussion button there and just put your questions there so we can form a bit of community there and exchange. Yeah. Thanks. Are there any questions? We maybe have to stop the recording, then people are more eager to ask questions. Yeah?